What are you thinking about politically right now? What's on your radar? To quote your co-host Chris Laval from Rising.
I mean, it's the same thing everybody's thinking about right now. So it's, what happened.
I know what you're talking about Kanye and Kim Kardashian. Yeah,
right,
totally.
Right.
Yeah, this is a safe space. Yeah.
I can't believe that marriage failed. I thought that thing was set in stone.
I mean, you actually did tweet about it. Now that I remember, right?
Yeah,
you were like,
did.
if they can't make it,
if they can't make it, we're all screwed because we're supposed to be perfect.
You two are joking, but obviously the news on everybody's mind is how Kamala Harris had the wrong outfit on the cover of Vogue. There are just days where you look at the news and you're like, I can't believe my eyes, and that's what I felt like today when I saw the news breaking about the cover of Vogue and Kamala Harris.
They told her they were going to use the picture of her in like a baby blue outfit, and they used one with her in a different color, and apparently her people were flipping out behind the scenes, which goes to show you Kamala Harris is exactly who we thought she was, because instead of thinking about what's happening in the country right now and like an attempted insurrection, she's like, oh my God, my outfit is the wrong color.
Besides those really important stories, what are you thinking about?
So, for my show for tomorrow, what I have lined up, of course, I'm going to be talking about the attempted insurrection, or I call it the diet coup of the government. I'm going to be talking about the Twitter and basically every social media outlet giving Trump the death penalty effectively. So that I got that coming up, and the normal, a bunch of other stuff. I'll be running my mouth for about 2.5 hours as per usual.
And what are your thoughts on all of this?
Oh, geez, which one you want me to start with? You want me to start with the attempted coup?
Yeah.
So the reason I call it a diet coup is because, in my mind, a coup has to involve some people in the military at the highest levels of the government who actually make it so that, as Bhaskar Sankara said, you can grab the levers of power and keep it. You know what I mean? So, in other words, it had to have like some chance of success in order for it to be that. And this was just like somebody on Twitter called them flabby suburbanites. Somebody else, the guys look like they're from Duck Dynasty, and some guy was with his shirt off.
Comic Con. It looks like Comic Con to me.
And I'm not trying to downplay the damage that they caused, because they caused a lot of damage, and over 50 people are injured, and there's I think 5 or 6 are dead. So this is nothing to like downplay or scoff at. Sure. And my only point is, there was no way in hell that this was going to work, not even close. And so I guess the next logical question is, well, what should happen next? Because the conversation is, some people were saying 25th Amendment, take Trump out by the 25th Amendment because he was basically egging this on. Other people were saying, well, let's do impeachment. That's the big debate that's happening now.
Right.
But interestingly, I saw something earlier today in The Nation that really caught my eye, because I think it makes the most sense. I think the way to handle this is for Congress to invoke the 14th Amendment, Section 3 and Section 5, which basically says, if you have a politician or somebody in the government who's effectively egging on an insurrection or a rebellion, that you basically can ban them from ever holding public office again. And in order to do that, you don't need the exorbitant numbers that you need if you're doing impeachment. You only need a simple majority. So I think that that's what the House should do, and I think that that's what the Senate should do. And then we wouldn't have to worry about Trump 2024, and we wouldn't have to worry about Trump deciding, whatever, wants to be a senator or something like that. And listen, I do think that there should be consequences, because even though he was talking out of both sides of his mouth, so he was giving himself enough cover to say, no, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I wasn't really egging it on. We all know the spirit of what he was saying was egging it on. Right. So he is guilty of that. And should there be some consequences for it? Absolutely. I think we have to do something.
I'm like, what the hell do you remove a president for, if not this? Like, why do we have it? If not for this, if not for like, my other thing about it is that, you have to punish Trump because we're being very punitive with all the people that, ended up walking around the Capitol. And I agree with you that, this was a very serious thing, and there were some very serious actors in there. There were people with zip ties and shit like that, and all weapons and everything. But there were also a lot of people that just like walked with a crowd into the Capitol because the police let them in there. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
And I think a little of what I'm seeing this week, and I'm like, I really do think we should punish these people with like the laws that we already have. I think it's like this big push to call them domestic terrorists and to call them anarchists, like I've seen on the news, is really what's scary to me. You know, I'm like, I don't think it's worth painting them all with the same domestic terrorist brush, or even using the term domestic terrorist at all. And you know, I think I'm like, let's differentiate between the people who were just like grandmas wandering around like it was Comic-Con, and then the actual real deal serious actors there. Like there were pipe bombs placed. That is a separate thing than like literally I saw an interview with a guy who it appeared didn't have had mental problems. You know what I mean? Like, these are like sort of separate categories, and what I'm a little most worried about is this like rush to just like call them all domestic terrorists and give Joe Biden this edict to make a new Patriot Act.
Exactly correct. No Patriot Act 2.0. No Patriot Act 2.0. No Patriot Act 2.0.
And we have the laws. We have them all.
We have those. And actually, Evan Greer, who's joining us later, basically has this exact critique, which is that we don't need to change surveillance laws. That was not the issue. People knew this was going to happen, and this is going to be something that I think. And I think that a lot of the left, when it comes to issues both of surveillance and of big tech, I think there is I understand where it comes from. I think there is a problem. I just want everyone drink when I say problematic. Seriously, this is coconut water, but there's a problematic tendency to and I understand where it comes from. But to me, the kind of rush to expand either the surveillance state or the rush to expand big tech's power or the police state, I understand where it comes from. I think it's misguided. And I also think it's like, I have a problem with it on the level of principle. But even if I didn't have a problem on it on the principle level, it's a problem on the strategic level. Because as we all know, the people who this will bite most in the ass is the left.
Sure.
Yes, and I feel like no lefties who are in positions of power understand exactly what you just explained, and you're 100% correct.
Yeah, and there's an interesting counter argument. I mean, when I say interesting, I'm being charitable, but a lot of people are like, well, who cares? Because they already go after the left. They already censor the left. They already surveil us. So why not just apply it to the other side? And it's like, well, things can get worse.
Yes.
Like things get worse.
And also, admitting you're a hypocrite isn't really a great argument either. Like, yeah, I'm a hypocrite, and so what? Like, well, that alone is not good.
My other argument specifically about the domestic terrorism label is that, like, the term terrorism is a vague one at this point. Like, yes, it has been used for people like the Oklahoma City bomber and, in the past for domestic terrorists, but kind of since 2000, it's become this very vague catch-all term for any non-state affiliated, like, hostile actor.
Right.
And we've used it to do like torture to people and stuff like that. Like, I would say, let's not use the term. Let's try to not use the term terrorist and be more specific just in general, rather than try to like wokely expand like the use of terrorist because to make it even or something. You know what I mean? I feel like I see so many people being like, like if they were black, they'd be terrorists. I'm like, let's try not to call anybody.
Right. The response to that isn't let's make more people terrorists who aren't black. The response is let's not make black people terrorists.
Let's stop talking about. Stop
it's the same thing with the affluenza thing, right?
I do come at it from a slightly different perspective. Like, I understand your point. I think you're 100% correct. I think the downsides of rushing to call it terrorism are actually colossal, and it could lead something to like a Patriot Act 2.0. So point definitely taken. My view on it is more like I'm fine with using the term terrorist or domestic terrorist, but what I would implore people to do is at the very least give the conversation the nuance that's deserved. So in other words, whenever we talk about something that happens with Black Lives Matter, a rally or something like that, and then elements of it become violent, like the right would love to call that domestic terrorism and arrest everybody and throw the book at them. Whereas our response is always, well, hold on now, 97% of the people at this rally were totally peaceful. They're peaceful protesters. So let's acknowledge that. And then, yes, you can go after the 3% if they actually break laws or whatever. By the same token, the exact same thing should apply here. Yes, even though I do not like these people, I don't politically agree with these people. There are people, like you were describing before, Jack, who just were not partaking in the violent elements of this. And we got to be honest about that and upfront about that. But go after the ones who did do it, because obviously there were very serious crimes that were committed.
For sure.
Yeah, and there's actually footage of people who, again, these are not people I agree with and would like agree with on, in the voting booth or anything, but like, and there were people there who were like, calm down, like trying to pacify the crowds. And I also think that what we should remember is that like Timothy McVeigh, like what did Bill Clinton do with that? He passed the effective, Anti-Terrorist Death Penalty Act, which just expanded the use of the death penalty.
Right.
And who does that apply to mostly? Black people. Like it's not, it's something we really need to be cautious about and look at.
The social media censorship, exact same issue we have here, which is like, people could cheer when it's their political opponents that's happening to, but then you did just agree to the principle. And now immediately, I mean, the Red Scare podcast was banned, I remember when we had this conversation, the Chapo Trap House Reddit was banned.
Right.
And I was like, of course this was going to happen because everybody was just cheering for censorship like 5 minutes ago.
But what's frustrating is that a lot of the people who are cheering for that would say that those people are fascists or fascist enablers. Like, I look.
Oh, about like Chapo and them, they would say it about?
Yes. Now listen to how principled I am. Red Scare called me congenitally boring. But I don't, what is it? I may not agree with what you have to say about me being congenitally boring, but I will fight to the death to defend your right to tweet. So there you go. You're welcome, Red Scare. But yeah, they went after a bunch of women who were at a party, a socialist party, a DSA party or a Jacobin party. And then as Sarah Leonard said it, like, we were all upset. They were upset that they were not in an article that we were all upset we were in. Anyway, enough pouring the tea. I'm sure Red Scare will come on either my show or Useful Idiots at some point. So again, that's my Voltaire line on them. But no, but I mean, I always bring up the example of Palestinians and Palestinian critics of Israel. And it's like, I don't care more. It's not like I care more about Coup than I don't agree with them. I think they are dangerous and scary. It just, we have to look at how we are going to respond to this stuff as opposed to. We don't
even have to go that far. Rania Khalek, Abby Martin, Max Blumenthal, Ben Norton. These are all people that at one point or another have experienced censorship.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
And they're
right. And
usually just correct about stuff. Like they say things that are true and then they get consequences for it.
Totally, yeah. In fact, today, I was inviting Jason Stanley to potentially have a debate with Daniel Bessner about fascism and coups. And some rando, but I just think it's so telling, was just like, I'd be careful because Katie and Matt Taibbi had on Max Blumenthal. And I was like, how dare you? I had him on recently, much more recently on my show. So why are you invisibilizing me? Anyway, but yeah, I agree. And it's a fraught subject. And again, I think that like, the whole thing about like the affluenza debate, right? Like we should be pointing out that Black Lives Matter people would have been shot and killed. Yes. We should be pointing out that in terms of just in general, like the criminal justice system, Black people are locked up for things disproportionately, right? And the move and the push should be, and I think we talked about this last time, Jack, a bit, but the push should be, let's highlight this and fight against that, not fight for more white people and more
fight for fair treatment for everybody, not to crack down harder on right-wing white people.
What I'd say also is that, everybody was so astonished by what happened at the Capitol and the way the police acted at the Capitol. What is alarming about this is that a hard right mob formed in the Capitol and had assistance and aid from the local police. Like that is something that like has happened and will keep happening around the country, and that's what's alarming about what happened on Wednesday, I guess. What happened on Wednesday? Not that a bunch of people occupied a state building. Like I know that was kind of the most arresting thing that we saw on television, but actually the core of what was scary about Wednesday is a hard right fascist mob forming with police assistance.
Right.
Yeah. There's a debate, an active debate that's, alive and well every time there's any sort of riot that breaks out. It's like, what exactly are the tactics that we should all be in favor of? You know what I mean? Because obviously the cause matters. And so the tactics, in some instances, people might view more synthetically certain tactics if the cause is more just.
Sure,
so I take your point. And those are all conversations that we've been, having on the left for a really long time. And there is a lot of disagreement. Are you old school Malcolm X style or are you more MLK style? And I think we'll have those debates, for until the end of time, pretty much.
No, the vast majority of the people that were like wandering around the Capitol were like people that like rushed in with a crowd and got pushed in like Comic-Con people. You know what I mean? Like, I do think that there were real deal serious actors with them, but I think that like this immediate
zip tie guy.
Zip tie guy, like that guy is scary. Like zip tie guy is scary to me.
But he was found with Molotov cocktails too, if I remember correctly.
Molotov cocktails, and there were pipe bombs found at the RNC.
And apparently, they were waiting for Trump's further orders. That's one thing I read too, which is kind of crazy.
You know, it's like
because then he comes out and he speaks out of both sides of his mouth, and he like condemns them while also telling them they're very special people and they mean well.
Yeah,
and,
right. What do you think of the response?
The response from Trump?
Trump, yeah.
Well, this gets into the broader conversation about impeachment versus why I think the way they should go is the 14th Amendment as opposed to impeachment, because it's classic Trump. Trump is a classic, as Crystal Ball said on the last episode of Crystal Kyle and Friends, he's a classic abuser where like he goes right to that line and then reels it in, and then goes right to that line and then reels it in.
Right. And
that's exactly what happened here. So he went out there and he said, like, we love our law enforcement. We're going to keep our law enforcement safe. We're going to respect our law enforcement.
Right.
And also this election was totally fraudulent and totally stolen. And I understand why you guys are out there doing what you're doing, but definitely be good to our law enforcement. But also I totally get why you're out there. So he says both things at the same time to give himself enough cover so that he could weasel out of actual accountability, so that when it does, if they were to try to impeach, they wouldn't get enough Republicans, and it would just all go up in smoke and there'd be no consequences. So it's classic Trump, and this is what he's done on every issue forever, and he'll keep doing it.